Hi everyone, my name is Justine Hopkins. I'm a first year student and I'm super excited to welcome you to UTM's Miscarriages of Justice first ever case review podcast. I would now like to introduce my fellow co-hosts.
Hey folks, my name is and I am a third year student and I am so excited to be a part of the first episode of this podcast series. I would also like to take a moment to acknowledge that sensitive content will be talked about in this podcast and that viewer discretion is advised. Now, without further ado, let's get this case review started.
Here we have Mr. Glen Assoun, who was wrongfully convicted of the murder of Brenda Way. Way was the recently divorced wife of Assoun and also the 11th sex worker to be murdered in the Halifax-Dartmouth area in a decade.
Assoun made apparent verbal threats and physically abused Brenda. He then fired his court-appointed attorney and self-represented himself, despite his highest level of education being that of 6th grade.
Way was discovered partially clothed and battered on the pavement. Her body showed signs of defense wounds, indicating that she had tried to defend herself against the perpetrator, and a slit jugular. Her attacker utilized immense violence to end her life, according to the autopsy report.
Her body was found murdered near a low-rise apartment complex. Some believe that she was headed to 109 Albert Lake Road in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia.
It is also suspected that she may have been heading to a nearby crack house near that address.
Brenda left Assoun in July of 1995. Her body was also discovered in the early hours of November 12th of 95. Assoun was accused of torturing and raping a sex worker in 1997. The woman later testified against him in court. However, she later identified another man as the attacker. On September 6, 1996, Constable David McDonald had taken over the investigation of the case, where he received a tip from Brenda Way's sister, who informed Constable McDonald that she saw a psychic vision and learned that Brenda had been murdered with a broken tip knife.
Investigators returned to the crime scene almost a year later, and in fact did find a knife laying in the grass.
There was no blood, no DNA, no fingerprints on the item, but police suspected it as the murder weapon that Assoun supposedly killed Brenda. Assoun was then convicted of the murder of his former ex-wife, Brenda Way.
Glen Assoun was exonerated in March 2019 with the help of his lawyers and Innocence Canada after spending nearly 17 years incarcerated for a crime that he did not commit.
Assoun wrote a letter to Carter, the head of Innocence Canada at the time.
An application to the Federal Department of Justice's Criminal Conviction Review Group was filed.
Assoun was released from prison in November 2014 and officially exonerated in March 2019.
This is a very intense case, filled with many emotions and many questions. We will now examine and dissect the issues with this case and how it caused this profound miscarriage of justice. As we mentioned, Brenda was the 11th sex worker in the Halifax-Dartmouth area to die. Sex work is a very dangerous industry, and all sex workers are at risk to some form of violence in their career. There have been numerous bills, such as Bill C-36, to legalize sex work and improve the safety for all sex workers in Canada. It is very possible that Way's real perpetrator could have been a potential client in regards for her services.
When Assoun fired his court-appointed attorney and made the decision to self-represent in court, it should be noted that Assoun did not have a high level of understanding of how trials and court proceedings work and was up against two very experienced prosecutors. Most of the evidence that Assoun submitted to the court that could have potentially exonerated him at the time was dismissed by the judge, as some of his evidence was not submitted properly.
He was unable to obtain a lawyer and was not able to get legal aid. Following his conviction on September 17, 1999 for second-degree murder, he was sentenced to life imprisonment without eligibility for parole for 18 and a half years.
The Department of Justice's Criminal Conviction Review Group, CCRG, exposed evidence as based on perjury for claiming a psychic vision as evidence to the police.
Innocence Canada spent years re-examining the physical evidence or re-interviewing the key trial witnesses in an attempt to exonerate Assoun and find Brenda's real killer. Compelling evidence from the Innocence Canada investigation indicated that convicted serial killer Michael McGray was the real killer.
McGray had lived a few houses down from where Brenda's body was originally found. He was also heard bragging to his own family that he attacked prostitutes for his own amusement and would leave them for dead, and that beating, stabbing, and slitting of their throats were his methods.
In a police interview, McGray denied killing Brenda, but admitted that they were acquainted. One of the witnesses recalled that her attacker was wearing socks and sandals on his feet in the snow, which fit the description of Michael McGray. Evidence was also shown at the trial that Glen was in British Columbia while the attack occurred in Halifax.
New evidence collected by Innocence Canada disproved the Crown's speculation about how he might have made it to Halifax to commit the attack, as well as two people who had known McGray in prison came forward to say he had admitted to them that he killed Brenda Way.
A criminal profiler had produced an in-depth investigative digital file of evidence that charted McGray's movements, associates, and patterns of behavior, making him the top suspect in Brenda's murder.
Avery Greenough, a violent sexual predator, had Brenda in his truck on the evening of her death. Suspiciously enough, the digital files recording this work and evidence had been deliberately deleted.
If the Court of Appeal had known in 2006 about the profiling of Michael McGray and Avery Greenough, it would never have upheld Glen's conviction and life sentence. Here is a statement directly from Innocence Canada in the release of the previously sealed files from the Nova Scotia Supreme Court in the case of Glen Assoun.
Innocence Canada believes that much more remains to be discovered about this case. Starting in 1998, police tunnel vision fixated on Glen Assoun, leading to a seriously flawed initial police investigation and leading ultimately to the deliberate destruction and non-disclosure of relevant information. One of the most serious breaches of public trust that is possible to imagine. The impact of this outrageous behavior distorted and subverted the judicial process.
A compensation agreement has been reached between Glen Assoun and the Nova Scotia Supreme Court, along with the federal government, for his wrongful conviction for murder and nearly the 17 years he spent in prison. It is not known where Assoun resides now, but it is believed that he is probably spending time with his 27-year-old daughter, Amanda Huckle, after missing many years of her life, including her wedding, while incarcerated.
This case is a perfect example of what our club stands for. It is truly a miscarriage of justice, representing the flaws of our legal system, the disregard and purposeful dismembering of evidence, and the tragedy of how an innocent man will never regain the 17 years of his life that he spent in prison for a crime he did not commit.
We thank you today for joining us for the case review of the wrongfully convicted Glen Assoun, and we'll hope to see you next month for our December case review.
And remember to follow us on Instagram at UTM_MJ.
Thanks for watching.
Woo! Bye.
Yeah, imagine we should include our bloopers. Yo, that'd be a good idea.
It would be fun. Thank you.
Bye.
Okay. I wanted to laugh so bad. So bad.
When I messed up. Do you think we should go one more time? And
definitely.
Yeah, okay.
She identified her killer as another. Oh, I said killer. Sorry. From the start. At least it's better this time. It was so funny.
Yeah. Get it all out now.
Getting it. Ha ha ha. I'm gonna force my laugh right now. Okay. This is the one.
This is the one. Third time's a charm for you.
Okay. What is this, fifth? Okay.
Okay. 3, 2, 1. They're gonna think we're bad people.
They're gonna think we're psycho. That's what they're gonna think. Two sociopaths just doing a podcast.
Exactly. That's exactly what we're gonna title it.